Okay, Chair, we are now streaming live on YouTube. I hand the meeting over to you.
Thank you, Amanda. Good evening and welcome to East Devon District Council's Cabinet meeting for the 12th of May 2021. I'm your Chair, Councillor Paul Arnott, and welcome to everyone or anyone watching the meeting via live streaming, which includes most of our members and officers tonight. We are actually here back in Blackdown House, you may be interested to know, so please bear with us if anything goes slightly wrong. The meeting is being recorded as ever, so please bear this in mind and be mindful that we are under the Members' Code of Conduct all the way through and reserve the right to remove or disconnect any participant disrupting the meeting. Could you please make sure you turn your phones off or turn them to silent. As this meeting is dependent upon the internet and power supply, if we lose those and after 15 minutes we can't reconnect, we'll have to adjourn and reconvene at a later date notified on our website. Please can you make sure all microphones are muted when you're not speaking to avoid background noise, and as ever grateful if you keep your points short and don't interrupt. If you wish to comment, please raise your electronic hand and wait to be called. All councillors have been sent the agenda for today's meeting, and members of the public who wish to see it can find it at eastdevon.gov.uk. We'll now start the meeting by Amanda doing a roll call of committee members here present. Can you please, committee, now unmute your mic, and when you hear your name, please confirm you are here by saying the following: present here in Blackdown House. Present here in Blackdown House, or whether you are accessing the meeting from elsewhere. When you have confirmed you're present, please mute your microphone again. Amanda.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Arnott.
Present here in Blackdown House.
Councillor Hayward.
Present here in Blackdown House.
Councillor Armstrong.
Present here in Blackdown House.
Councillor Hookway.
Present here in Blackdown House.
Councillor Young.
Blackdown House. I think you might be on mute, Jeff.
Present here in Blackdown House.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ledger.
Present here in Blackdown House. Thank you, Amanda.
Councillor Loudon.
Present here in Blackdown House. Amanda.
Councillor Rickson.
Present here in
And Councillor Rowland.
Present here in Blackdown House.
Thank you. I can confirm your quorum today, Chair.
Thank you very much, Amanda. Now we turn to the main agenda, and agenda item 1 is public speaking. We have one speaker registered, and that's Mr. Ian Barlow, who wishes to speak on item 6, public toilets review, and item 9, culture and tourism offer. Mr. Barlow, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair. As many of you will know, I'm not very good at public speaking, but I feel strongly enough about this that I have decided to, again, have a go at talking with you, to you. Sidmouth obviously is very heavily reliant on tourism, and we have a very elderly population. You're on about cutting our toilets, looking at cutting our toilets. One of them is the one in the town centre, which has 110 usages. That is the largest and most heavily used toilet in East Devon. And you're talking about cutting it down. When you then go to item 9, you're then on about tourism and attracting people into our area, etc., which we're getting more and more people coming to the area. We're expecting bumper years this year, next year, and hopefully going forward. And no one will enter into proper discussion with us about running these facilities ourselves, because although you say that you can do it better and you think it's cheaper to do it the way you're doing it, we don't necessarily agree. We think we might be able to do better. And I noticed that there is, on category C's, you will offer it to councils, definitely, but on category B's, which ours are, some of it might be given to councils, local councils, but you might then sell them off. Well, we would just ask you, if you are going to do anything on this, please, we would like more consultation. We would like to be talked to, not told what's going to happen in a normal consultation, but proper consultation, where actually you might want to step out of your comfort zone and do something a little bit different, like give us all of the toilets in Sidmouth, so that we can actually do something with it, so that we could run them cheaper than you can. You know, you work out that it's £30,000 a toilet to run. Well, we think we can do it cheaper than that. But unless you give us the whole lot, all of the assets, not just the ones you don't want and the ones you want to keep that you think you can sell for a bit of profit, we think we can do better. You've done it in beer, and one of the points in beer, you said to make it work as across the broad, it had to be done in more than one place, but nothing's happened. No one will actually talk to us. There's a lot of talk about these things, but nothing actually happens. Sidmouth invested very heavily in the EDA when it voted for the EDA back 2 years ago. In fact, more than that. We've had 6 years now of EDA, but 2 years you've been in power. And it just feels like when you look at the cultural and tourism thing, Sidmouth doesn't even get a mention. And yet we are the biggest area for tourism. We pull more people in. In the survey you did in Exmouth on tourism, 80% of the people that answered that survey said that they went to Sidmouth for their day out when they were in Exmouth, if they were staying in Exmouth. So we are
30 seconds remaining, Mr. Barlow.
We are a very important part of the tourism offer, and yet no one's talking to us. Culturally, we are doing more already. Just by Sidmouth Town Council doesn't have a lot of money, but we enable people to do things with a passion, and people with passion can do better than people that are just employed to do a job. Tomorrow, we are opening our 6 meters by 3 meters new billboard that is done by a world famous artist, paid for by the culture people up in London, £50,000 grant that we've got. We don't talk about it. We actually do it. We don't want to talk about running a strategy. What we need is help. The last strategy meeting that we went to, the culture and tourism, I can't think of the name of it, but I will get it here if you just give me 2 seconds.
Yep, happy to.
Mr. Wood was the officer that was supposed to be in charge of the culture forum, the arts and culture forum. He didn't even turn up for the last minute meeting. And we have people there that we've put in there, business people that we've put down there that are supposed to be running festivals because there's money promised that you've got there, and no one turned up. No one can answer the questions. It's almost embarrassing. And I would just ask that please work with us. We can help you because we've done an awful lot of this. We've already done a big website. We've already done a huge thing on tourism. We've spent over £100,000, a tiny little town council, £100,000 over the last 2 years, because we know how important it is and we can't get any help from East Devon. It's nice you're doing a strategy. It's just a pity you don't use us to help you so that we save our resources together and don't waste them. I know I'm over time.
Thank you, Mr. Barlow. No, I was happy to allow you and to hear you speak. I'll just pass a few very quick comments, if I may. But first of all, as East Devon Arts, we were not in the administration at all 2019 to 20. So I've been leader since June last year. I am incredibly proud that we have appointed a portfolio holder for culture, leisure, tourism and sport. I'm incredibly proud that we've brought forward this paper today. This is doing exactly what you are asking for. It is beginning the process, and it will allow people like you to get involved in Sidmouth as well. You will be consulted. In recent years, the last decade, this council has been effectively absent when it comes to leading on culture and leisure. Those offers are incredibly important, very much aware of your own folk festival there as well. So what we are bringing forward is a vision. Now, I don't know if you know me, Mr. Barlow, but my business is in the entertainment industry. I understand that. That's why I brought forward this portfolio position and have brought forward this paper now. I agree with you. It is the beginning, and it would be completely unacceptable from my point of view if people like you were in any way excluded from that. We want to embrace you, but we've got to start somewhere. I think on the second matter, which will obviously be picked up by other members when we come to item 6 on the public loo reviews. Again, this paper, if you read the documents presented for today, the officer in a very sound report points out that this has been on the back burner since 2014. No other administration has had the bottle to pick this issue up. We realise it has to be picked up now because there are serious financial implications. We are left short of money by the government, as you'll be aware. And I agree with you. We must work to see if we can interact with the town councils to come up with better solutions. But what I would urge you to realise is that this is about getting a consultation going. So I take your criticism, but we are at point A on an A to Z, as we are on the culture as well. So I hope that's helpful. I think we're batting for the same side, Ian. So I hope you can take that at face value. Thank you very much for that. Agenda item 2, do we have any apologies?
Yes, Chair. Councillor Sarah Jackson.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Agenda item 3 is declarations of interest, which are done by a roll call by our DSO Amanda.
Councillor Arnott.
None, thank you, Amanda.
Councillor Hayward.
Thank you. Agenda item 6, I'll declare a personal interest as the clerk to Newton, Poppleford and Hertford Parish Council, which is a local authority that leases a toilet building from East Devon District Council and may well be affected by the outcome of item 6.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
None, thank you.
Councillor Hookway.
None, thank you.
Councillor Young.
Thank you.
Councillor Ledger.
Item 10 is a personal. I am a ward member and town councillor for Seaton. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Loudon.
None, thank you, Amanda.
Councillor Rickson.
None, thank you.
Councillor Rowland.
None, thanks, Amanda.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Amanda. We now come to agenda item 6, the public toilet review, known as right toilet in the right place. I think we can all second that. And we have a report from Andrew Hancock, Service Lead Street Scene, and from Tim Child, Service Lead Place Assets and Commercialisation. Thank you, Andrew and Tim. I'm assuming you know which one goes first, so off you go, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be presenting this one and Tim will help with any questions later on. I have got quite an in-depth summary or introduction to go through for this report because it's quite an in-depth report. And afterwards, I've briefly got 10 pictorial slides to show you, which we can rattle through really quickly, which just show what I've been talking about through the introduction and the current state of play with our toilet stock. So if you cast your minds back to June last year, we reported on the COVID opening of our public toilets and at the same time highlighted the need to complete this long outstanding review of our public toilet stock, its state of repair and costs of service provision. That recommendation has led to this report, The Right Toilet in the Right Place, which sets out to do exactly that. Review our public toilet provision, recognising it's a very important but non-statutory service and looking at what it costs to provide, what investment is needed for the future, and what level of provision is felt to be sustainable. The review attempts to set out some quantitative guiding principles and measures to address what is the right toilet and the right place, whilst balancing these against the need to invest in our toilet stock, as we've had no capital investment since 2014, as the leader outlined, due to the pending review, as well as making decisions which protect important service provision and helping to address our future budget deficit of around £3 million. I've tried to set out the report in a logical order to take you through the various considerations that we've gone into in this review, and there are a lot of background linked information to show the level of detail that we've gone into. The areas we've covered are as follows. The introduction discusses some of the background context, and that a review of public stock has been long outstanding. It's in our asset management plan dating back to 2014. The review tries to balance our medium-term financial plan saving requirement with a protected level of toilet provision, whilst looking at enhancing and investing in our retained stock so that they're fit for purpose and what people expect to access these days. Introduction also shows that toilet provision costs us almost £900,000 a year, made up of £473,000 of direct costs, £263,000 of recharges, and £158,000 of depreciation on the capital assets. Section 2 covers the principles of provision. In this section, we've discussed the suggested principles that set out where and how we will provide public toilets, such as at least one toilet per town, with more in tourist areas or prime parks. Proximity, which discusses walking distances between facilities and relates to the proximity maps linked under background information, and COVID hygiene secure design. The proximity principle is an important one in debating what you feel tonight we can afford against the level of provision, as it shows that we are quite well served with facilities in our towns. Through this proximity principle, we've set out to ensure that at a minimum there's a toilet block within an 8-minute walk at the most in town centre areas, which is a 600-metre radius. And this will be based on demand and facilities and other ownership. And where possible, this radius should be reduced to 300 metres, which is a 4-minute reasonable walk, based on the British standard of 3 miles an hour, which is used in lots of design guides. I should note as well that if we do take forward category B sites, and these are used in other ways, but retain some publicly accessible toilets, then that radius and that walking distance will reduce. Section 3 looks at the potential categorization of the toilets. So we explain the rationale behind these suggested categories, being that category A are sites which meets our principles, are well used, underpin the community or visitor uses, and that we believe we should continue to provide. There's 13 sites in this category, 14 if you count the one in beer, which is part of the beer trial. And Ian Barlow does raise an interesting point around that, and the categories, the categorization and the consultation we talk about in this report are not meant to preclude town or parish councils from expressing an interest in taking on these sites. Category B sites are of course important locally, but we're suggesting are slightly less well used than category A sites, or where there are multiple toilets in close proximity. We're then suggesting that we need to consider if we can afford provision at these sites any longer. However, we believe offering them as alternative uses can retain publicly accessible toilets and add another attraction, such as a cafe or pop-up gym, as other councils have done, and the toilets would then be operated by the other party. In the report, you can see the Chine Seaton Hideaway Cafe case study, where a few years ago we had a small cafe offer and a rather large underused public toilet, and we marketed the building and the entire footprint, and we've now got a very successful cafe there, and I've got some pictures of that in the slides shortly. And finally, category C are the ones that we are suggesting are less well used based on the water consumption table under the background links, and where there is a good level of alternative provision. In these instances, we don't feel there's an obvious alternative use for a commercial or concession business use, and so we're suggesting these could be offered to the town and parish council if they feel provision at these locations is still necessary. We do, of course, understand this is an emotive subject, and this is why we've tried to apply some quantitative parameters and categorization to this against the context of a need to reduce service costs to meet our deficit, and recognising that what we maintain must be fit for purpose. Section 4 then sets out how we undertook the review and goes into all of the whys and wherefores as how we came to the suggested categorization. As you debate this matter tonight, please try to hold in your mind the quantitative review, the principles of provision, our desire to provide top-class public toilets where we maintain them, the opportunity to have great facilities with adult changing places and addressing loo gender inequality, but all the while recognising that as a council, we do have some difficult decisions, financial decisions to make to meet next year's deficit. If we don't make some balanced decisions here to help deliver great facilities whilst reducing costs, then we will at some point have to cut services elsewhere. This leads us on to the final sections, you'll be pleased to hear. Section 5, which discusses the proposed consultation and timescale on the suggested sites. Section 6, which is the financial considerations, and Section 7, paid access. And just quickly to highlight some areas from there. The finances, it discusses the COVID secure hygiene design standards and the style of toilet we want to provide going forwards. And this relates to the British Toilet Association Best Practice Guide. And I believe this gives us some great opportunities to have first-class facilities as I mentioned, with some adult changing spaces in our main towns, and a better ratio of provision for women to address what in the US they're calling potty parity, 2-to-1 in favour of women. In this section, I've showed that if we retain all Category A sites and invest in them as suggested, that will cost us 3.15 million in terms of capital investment. I've also shown the additional capital cost of almost 1.8 million, so almost 5 million in total, if you elected to retain all public toilet sites, although we are advising this is not prudent or financially viable given the strain on the capital budget. We have suggested the category list based on a variation of factors, and so any additions to this will increase the potential capital budget burden and reduce the possible revenue savings at a time when the council is facing a large budget deficit. However, for the purposes of debate, I've added that the average cost per toilet block for renovation will be in the order of 190,000 should you want to consider additions or subtractions to the list. Finally, section 7 looks at comparing our operating costs with 2 leading private sector suppliers, Danfo and Healthmatic, as well as some costs for paid access. It shows that we could add paid access to our Category A sites for an additional capital cost of 250,000, and this could bring an income of around 200,000, depending on what level we elected to set the charge at, but that's at the 40p level. Southams currently have a charge of 20p, but they are talking about putting that up to 40p. Elsewhere in the country where Danfo and Healthmatic operate, they have a charge of 50p. It is worthy of serious consideration, as this would pay for itself in around 13 to 18 months, depending on footfall and the charge, and that could then offer the prospect of an almost entirely self-funded toilet service with an improved building and cleanliness standard. Again, for the purposes of debate, the average cost for installation is around £12,000 per block, should you wish to again look at additional subtraction of additional blocks with paid access. To sum up, we recognise public toilet provision is a very emotive and sensitive subject and an important service for everybody. We've tried very hard to provide a balanced and detailed review, recognising that we can't do nothing. Our stock needs investment, and where we operate these toilets, we should strive to improve them. However, unfortunately, we don't believe we can continue to afford to provide toilets and invest in them at all 26 sites we currently own. So that's my review of the report, Chair. And if you bear with me, I'll just quickly rattle through these slides.
Okay, take your time. Thank you.
I've just got to set this up. Can you all see the slideshow?
We can, thank you.
So this is a selection of pictures to quickly illustrate what I've been talking about. So there we have Lacewalk Toilets in Honiton. It's currently shut, but we're looking to open it with our reduced COVID transmission rate that we talked about recently. It's a Category A prime site, but it is quite a shabby and unwelcoming block. It's very outdated in its setup and in need of investment, as I think you can see. And that's indicative of many of our sites throughout the district. This is Marsh Road in Seaton. We've got this down as potentially a Category C. It's poorly located, it's very outdated and shabby, and the town is well served in terms of the proximity principle with the seafront toilets and those operated by others. This is the block in Collerton, again, potentially a Category C. It's got a very low water consumption, and as you can see, needs an awful lot of updating and investment if we were to keep it. Inside our old and outdated public toilets, you're probably familiar with what it's like, but we've got very grubby tiles, mould on the ceilings, lots of things starting to fail, quite dark and dingy. This is an example of our Queen's Drive toilets, which was refurbed or built in 2014, replaced a very large block there that used to serve the pool. It's got very clear detailed signage, single cubicles which are front opening and accessible throughout. And we've just added some specific female designated toilets in response to some criticism over unisex only there. And inside, other examples of the new style blocks, you can see they're much lighter and airier than the old style public toilet. They have hygiene panels to make it easier to clean and reduce areas where dirt can be held. They have baby change facilities as standard and are more vandal resistant. They've got the built-in hand washers and dryers, which are much cleaner and easier to keep clean than sinks and less prone to vandalism. But I know people have different views of those. Inside our new facilities, this is what we're saying things should look like. So here we have the inbuilt sensor hand wash unit, sensor flush, and a hygiene bin that exits the space into a service void behind. So you can see it's very clean, it's easy to keep in that way, and there's plenty of space for the public to use it. This busy slide shows an example of the Seaton Hideaway Cafe, and at the top left you can see the very small and outdated cafe as it was, and the quite large outdated toilets which were underused. And then below the pictures of what it looks like now, the far right picture through that door at the back is the publicly accessible toilet, which in the summer also has a door from the outside into the cafe. The last one I'll leave you in with is another example provided by Councillor Young of what Category B alternative uses can look like, or C for that instance. Woodbury Parish Council are looking to rebuild their toilet block, or transform it, I should say, into a council office space for the parish council, incorporating a publicly accessible toilet and some meeting space, thus making much better use of the footprint of the area they have there. Thank you very much, Chair. I'm happy to take any questions on the detail of the report.
Okay, thank you very much indeed for that. I'm going to come to members from outside of the committee first. Members, can I ask your indulgence? Can you please remember that we in Cabinet are here in Blackdown House in somewhat difficult circumstances, and so I'd be grateful if you could be on your absolute best behaviour and keep your points short. And the other thing I would ask for, please, is that what this is moving towards is a consultation for work that has not been entered into by anybody else for the best part of 7 years. So if you want to make any political points, the elections are over, can you spare us those, please? And if you want to make any special pleading for individual lavatories, can you please save those for another day as well? But this is on the general principles. Thank you. Councillor Tom Wright, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I note your comments about political speeches, so I was very interested in your earlier comments. But anyway, although it's slightly parochial, I'm just wondering if the review, which I think has been very well documented by Andrew, is typical, very thorough job, might possibly have overlooked an aspect of equality to do with disabled. I noted the comments about the two Category A toilet blocks in Budley, both of which serve our beach hut tenants who actually pay a great deal of money for just an 8 by 6 foot plot of land on which they put their beach huts. And the prospect of turning the Station Road car park into Category B. What I would wish to point out is that the steamer steps toilets, which are the ones closest to the town centre and within 300 or 600 metres that Andrew spoke about, are totally unsuitable for people with any sort of mobility problems. I noticed Andrew nodding there. The steamer steps toilets, both male and female, are only accessible by quite steep and tortuous steps. And the only toilets close to the town that are accessible to people with disabilities are the Station Road toilets, which are close to the bus stop, close to coach stops, and in fact the only toilets that can provide a service to disabled. So I just wonder if enough attention has been paid to the equality aspect and the provision of toilets within a suitable distance for people with mobility problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Before I come back to Andrew, just to comment briefly on disability issues, can I just seek some advice from you as a very experienced councillor? I mean, were you aware of this 4, 5, 6 years ago as an issue that needed to be dealt with?
I wasn't. In fact, I was part of the group that provided the provision at Seaton. It's something that we've been looking at to provide. And I must say, although as a party when I was in power, we were keen to look at it, the opposition to look at toilets actually came from the vast majority of the rest of the council. It's something we were keen to look at because we recognise the financial problems years ago. Thank you.
Very good. I think you had a majority of about 2-1 in those days. Right, coming to the second speaker, please, Councillor Helen Parr.
Thank you. And much of what Councillor Wright has said applies to our loos in Dolphin Street. And I'm extremely concerned to see the comment, I think, on the slideshow that there are loos at both ends of the tram, because this is a death knell for the town. If you were going to suggest that people just stay down that end and don't come into Colleton because they won't be able to go to the loo, this is hardly encouraging tourism. It's a very good report otherwise, and obviously something has got to be done about the very substandard loos, and Colleton, you could see, is very substandard. However, I really think that to suggest that Colleton shouldn't have a loo is quite unacceptable, and I'm pleased to see that you're suggesting you would offer it to the town council, and that would, well, the parish council, that would be for them to decide. But otherwise, I think the point about disabled access is very well made, and we actually do have an excellent, good access to our disabled loo. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Parr. As your co-ward member, you'll be unsurprised to know that I agree with what you've said about Colleton there. My view is there may be two ways ahead. There may be the possibility of involving to the parish council if they're so minded. And it may be in a place like Colleton, what we can do is reduce down to one unisex disability access lavatory in due course. I think Andrew's made the point very well. Unfortunately, the devil's in the detail if you look at the water usage. But I totally agree with you, Councillor Parr. I think that just because Colleton isn't on a beachfront tourist destination, it is absolutely a place where walkers go through as part of the South West Coastal Path. So we'll need to consider that. Andrew, can I ask you
Chairman, I should have said that I did have an email from the tram people who said that they carry 90,000 visitors who go on the tram. Many of them come from the tram into Colleton. So we most definitely have tourism in Colleton.
Absolutely. No, I agree with you, Councillor Parr. And well, it doesn't seem as if they're flushing the loo very much is the only problem. But I think the need is clearly there. Andrew, can we come back to you very quickly to pick up on Councillor Wright's points about the general principle of disability as well?
Yes, certainly, Chair. I think you made a really good point at the start, that this is the start of this work, and that we've set out the framework and the basis and tried to show our thinking in depth. But in the detail, and I'm sorry, there is quite a lot in there, we say that we do need to complete an equalities impact assessment alongside the consultation, and that will be a detailed document that looks at the impacts on protected characteristics, including disability, of any changes to toilet provision. But we first need to understand what towns and parishes and the public think about it and what the likely outcome is before we can make that assessment. So that will be part of the work to come. Quickly touching on steamer steps, as Councillor Wright raises, we have looked at the cost there of changing the block to provide better access as part of the Category A refurbishment.
Thank you, Andrew, very much. And thank you, Councillor Parr.
Thank you for that, Andrew.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Councillor Wright. And Councillor Brewster Sarum, please.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair. It's been an excellent report. I'm going to just discuss in general terms. As you know from questions that I've asked in the past, I'm very supportive of the council looking to find savings and use its resources to benefit and improve the quality for its residents and visitors. And I note from the presentation that we had how good a quality of toilets can be as at Queen's Drive. And I can see that ultimately it will be good if we can get to the examples of Seaton as given here. But my question to Andrew is, we're going to hopefully try and find concessions or operators who will continue to provide the public toilets. How will we go about that, Andrew? And do you think we're going to be very successful? Because obviously some blocks may not be possible or practical to convert to become a successful seat and hide way. So I don't know how you're going to sort of market it. What sort of methods of marketing will you use is really what I'm looking to find out from you, so we get the best use from the asset. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Desaram. It's a little granular, that question at this stage, I think. But Andrew, have you got a sort of broad answer to that?
I'll try, Chair, and I might want to bring Tim Child in on the specifics around marketing. But in the first instance, as part of the consultation, we'll be seeking expressions of interest, assuming we take forward the category B list as it is. And we'll be looking to see what interest there is in the business community for alternative uses. All of it, of course, would be subject to planning and assessments of what the building would an appropriate use would be. If we set up a concession where we retained the site and it was leasehold, then we can require through the lease that there is a publicly accessible toilet. And we have touched on the ability to put a covenant in if we freehold transferred for the same, but that would then limit those offers coming forwards. I don't know, Tim, if you've got anything you want to add to that.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Andrew. Obviously, every site is different. Do you mind, and I'm sorry, and some of you here, you've probably already heard this from me before, but I think it'd be useful just to repeat it if you don't mind. So prior to coming to East Devon, I used to work for Taunton and West Somerset councils, and we went through a very similar exercise there within both of those councils. And I'll give you some specific examples because they're not that far away, and some of them you might know. So we had a site in Taunton behind what was then the Debenham store. It was a grotty toilet block, vandalised at night, lots of sort of drug usage there, and we managed and very successfully to market it and secure a lot of interest in that particular site, and secured a really good rent from a cafe operator that would also then run would also provide a toilet facility. That particular toilet facility, and there are different models depending on different sites, but that particular toilet facility was only open during daytime hours. But ultimately, being a town centre site, that was actually when there was greatest need for those toilet facilities. As another example, so in West Somerset Council, they decided that the budget for public conveniences was removed. They offered the transfer of those toilet sites to parish councils, town councils, or other community groups. And by the time I left West Somerset Council, I think all but one of those sites had been taken up with one of those three scenarios. And I went back there, must have been late last summer, and visited two towns in West Somerset, and typically toilets are near near the public car parks. So I saw two of these sites. And it was really nice to see, because these sites had been converted. There were still toilets blocks there, but there was a gym in one of the buildings, and in the other it was a cafe takeaway type use. So it absolutely depends on the site. But there's a real opportunity for those who do take on those sites to provide, a different type of toilet function than is provided now, but one that's invested in, maybe a much smaller offering, and maybe even with limited opening hours, but still fulfilling that need, and at the same time generating through the commercial element an income that funds the maintenance of those toilets, and in many cases a large surplus. So it depends on the individual site, but yes, there is demand. Ironically, and again, every site's different, but I can think of a number of our sites that are in what you could only describe as absolutely prime locations. So yes, there would be demand. There may well be sites that there aren't, but for the majority, I'd expect there would be demand.
Thank you very much, Tim. And I think that helps contribute to the extraordinary range of issues that underpin this, from as a council, do we need to raise more money, through to disability, through to what the opportunities are in the best sites, through to how do we protect the little used sites that are nevertheless vital to certain communities and certain groups of people. It's a very complicated thing. May I come next, please, to Councillor Marcus Hartnell, who I'm hoping isn't going to speak about the loos in Seaton near Tesco's, but perhaps he is. Over to you, Marcus, and congratulations, County Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Just three questions, actually. Firstly, regarding using, well, in the report it mentions potential alternative uses for Category B toilets, which may attract a commercial value. And there's the toilets in Harbour Road, which you just referred to, Chair, are the ones that I've got in mind. And there is an opportunity there for a commercial opportunity with perhaps toilets that can be offered alongside. However, the report speaks about just over £3 million being available capital budget for Category A toilets. Are we going to be assigning some capital budgets to Category Bs where we can see a potential return on investment if we're able to improve and let out? Because I couldn't see anything in the report anywhere about allocating any capital funds to sites such as the one in Harbour Road that may well give us a rental income going forward. My second question was to do with the case study at the Hideaway Cafe, which is a good example of reducing costs whilst offering public toilets. However, there are lessons to be learned from that as a model, because we did have some issues with the opening hours of the cafe that were rather erratic at times. So we need to obviously look at that moving forward to ensure that we tightly control or have some kind of service level agreement so that we can ensure public provision is maintained sort of on a regular basis as much as we can within agreement with any sort of operator. And the third thing was regarding the contactless payments. Firstly, I just wanted to know, with regards to the modelling, how they sort of got to their figures. They've sort of worked on a basis of half usage based on people having to pay. Is that figure from experience elsewhere? Because it just seemed to be quite low. And I was just wondering if we went down that route, it's potentially sort of alienating people that may not have means to pay with contactless. And I know it's difficult because if you go cash only, then there's those that don't carry cash. And if you go contactless, there's those that don't necessarily have the technology. But it's kind of whether you're sort of alienating part of the population by only going down one route of payment. Those are the 3 points. Thank you, Chair.
That's really, thank you very much, Councillor Hartnell, really good points. So essentially, Andrew, we're looking at whether there are potentially capital budgets for Category B loos. Obviously, sorry, I'm regurgitating what Marcus is saying. We have to be careful with places like the Highway as an example, because will the cafe hours match the public need hours for loos? So I don't think you need to answer that. But can you come to that Category B possible investment fund thing and maybe just look at the irreconcilable issue, really, isn't it, about contactless versus cash?
Yes, certainly, Chair. In terms of the Category B budget for alternative uses, no, we haven't set a budget for that or proposed it in this report. And using the Hideaway as an example, we put that to market and we asked the commercial providers to undertake the fit out. We demolished internally, so a small budget for that within a service budget, but they did the fit out. I have put in the report about using the transformation reserve to assist with legal fees and other supplementary costs related to transfers. So subject to discussion with Simon, we could talk about something there. So I think that's all I can say on that one. With regard to the contactless payment, the figures that the businesses use, Danfo and Healthmatic, are based on their experience. So they did do some site visits across our toilets to gauge level of use, and that's where the sort of visitor numbers have come from. They have said, though, that we may want to put some counters in to do some more detailed studies if we were to take forwards a contract with them to prove what the income level would be. And the 50% reduction is just their experience of what contactless does for use of the toilets, as locals tend to use their own toilets as a result. With regard to the inequity of contactless payment and the ability to do that, we can, and they have in South Hams, provided prepaid cards, if you like, for the TICs to give out to those without means. So you can get around the fact that people might not have a contactless device.
Sorry. Okay, Andrew, can we leave it there because you've frozen at the moment on screen? And thank you. Members, we're in a position, we've got quite a few speakers.
Somebody tell the chair that he's left the meeting.
So, Deputy Chair, would you mind stepping in temporarily until the leader's back up and running?
Repeat that.
Yeah, if you could just step in temporarily, Councillor Hayward, while
I think we
the
might be
leader...
having some bandwidth issues. Of course, but I think we're all being, Councillor Ledger has just been removed. I think we're having some bandwidth issues here. Everyone is being kicked out and my screen is completely frozen now.
Okay, so shall we take a short adjournment for 5 minutes? Henry, you happy for us to do that?
Yes,
while we
can I,
just resolve?
as Councillor Arnott isn't here, can I propose that we adjourn for 10 minutes until we can sort this IT problem out?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, bear with us a second.
Thank you.
Okay, so reconvening at 5:02.
Yeah, the strata guys are just
Yes,
going down
thank you.
to resolve.
Yeah. Bear in mind we're still streaming.
Can I ask all members to, thank you, Debbie.
Members, if you can just mute yourself, that would be great. Thank you very much.
Looks like it. I've been able to unmute and everything. I've taken it off mute. Sorry.
Is there anyone there?
Yeah. Hello, hello.
This jerkiness on the screen.
Are you back with us, Chair?
I'm back with you. I'm not sure about everybody else.
Okay, so we're still streaming, so if people can stay on mute unless they need to me.
Yeah. Can you all stay on mute? All stay on mute.
Okay, Chair, can you let me know if everyone is back with you in the room?
Just waiting for Councillor Rowland, Debbie.
Great, thank you.
Okay. So, Debbie, I think we're all back. Cabinet's all back, so we can go when you feel okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, when you're ready. Thank you for your patience, members.
Thank you. Okay, right, we're back in the room, as they say. So can I go to Councillor Jeff Young next, please? Sorry, shall I just explain, although Councillor Young is a cabinet member, we have hit a considerable time problem because of this. We're now after 7. We've been going on this item for over an hour. So I think it may be useful for all members to hear from the portfolio holder at this stage. Councillor Young, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's strange we're talking about toilets. I'm quite excited about this challenge. Is that better? Let's get a few things out of the way. We're not closing any public toilets. I've got a lot of feedback on this, I'm sorry. We're not going to change the form of entry to payment. That all depends on how the consultation goes. Most of our public conveniences were built in the 1950s. That makes some 70 years old, and like us, our plumbing and our structures are not as they were. In that 70 years, our population has changed, new estates and new towns built. Is there any way I can cut the feedback?
I'm afraid, Jeff, this is a problem with this system. This is making me more certain than ever that the idea of having a full council meeting at West Point on the 25th is out of the question. No, I think, yes, that's right. So,
Chair, can I? Chair,
yes,
could I
please,
interrupt
Anita.
a moment? I think Councillor.
Right.
I think.
Hang on, Jeff, please. Jeff, hang on a second.
No.
Say that again, Anita,
I think
please.
Councillor Rowland's microphone is. I think Councillor Rowland's microphone is open, and that's why we're hearing the feedback. So if that could be closed.
It is correct that we are not.
Jeff, hang on a second. Jeff, hang on a second. Clive is just dealing with Jack's microphone over there to get it closed, and that will then help us. Sorry about this, members. Please just bear with us, and members of the public. If anybody would like to sing a song in honour of Jacob Rees-Mogg and his failure to pass any legislation through Parliament, and may I point out to you, without being political, that I noticed in the Queen's speech yesterday, there's absolutely all mention of the legislation going through at all. Is Jack now on mute? Okay, thank you very much. Jeff, you will still hear a bit of echo. Sorry about that, but if you can just prevail. Okay, over to you, please.
Right. It is correct that we are not required to provide public toilets, and they don't need to be free. But the pandemic did highlight important problems if all our pubs and cafes were shut at the same time as all our loos. It was not a pleasant sight or smell, and we hopefully will never be in that position again. Now we have opened some toilets, but not others. And we can see there is not much call for some of those toilets that have recently been closed for over a year now. A couple of examples. Take my Parish of Woodbury. We took the ownership some 6 years ago, and it cost us around £14,000 a year. It's up a side street and a village hall next door. Plus, we rent an office and pay for council meetings in a church reading rooms. We are looking at knocking the building down, rebuilding the office, a meeting room, plus a public toilet that will pay us back in 15 years. Plus, it will be low energy, solar panelled, and 4 card chargers thrown in. So there's one example. Take the toilets at Port Royal. It's got a fabulous location. You come out of those gents' loos and you're hit with that fabulous iconic view of the cliffs. But I'm sure that we can do far better with that location than have a public loo in that location. Let's face it, our loos are past their sell-by date, and it's time we faced up to the challenge. Soon we will have to shut some because they fail environmental standards. We have new facilities along our seafronts like Queen's Drive, yet we never thought of a new loo in that location. We now have pubs open all day with lush, posh loos, unlike the old days when the pubs opened at 12, shut at 2, and then opened again at 5:30. The world has moved on, but our loos are a flashback to the mods and rockers. So let us get real and get moving on doing this modification. Like my football team and our recycling and waste team, I want our loos to be champions. I want to be proud of our loos, and you never know, we may win the Public Loo of the Year. It's not about savings, it's not about removing public loos, it's about recognising that we are now 70 years old and we want to move on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ewan, for prevailing in those very, very difficult acoustic circumstances. Members, there are many hands still up, and I feel as if it is wrong to deny you speech, but can I please ask Democratic Services and for members to agree to this? Can we do it for 1 minute each? I'm happy to do that if you're agreeable. If you're not agreeable, then please don't start speaking. Apologies to have to do that, but you can see the circumstances. Councillor Steve Gazzard, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to Andrew for the excellent report. But I think what this pandemic has shown is that public toilets are more important than they've ever been. And I'm slightly heartened by what I've just heard from Councillor Young, that we're not looking to close toilets because obviously I've got a vested interest in Exmouth, and I think to lose any of our toilets in Exmouth would be a bad mistake. But I look forward to the consultation, and I'm sure it will be meaningful consultation, Chair, and that hopefully we've got to take the public with us, because if the public don't buy into this, we're going to have all sorts of problems. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your courteous help, Councillor Gazzard. Very much appreciated. Councillor Paul Miller, please.
Thanks, Chair. I'm going to struggle here. We need to be really serious about offering full asset devolution, I believe, where a town or parish council has competence and a commitment to running the service more efficiently. I think the most compelling argument for this is that the town and parishes are more local to their community, and public toilets, sadly, is not a statutory service, but they can raise their precept by an unlimited amount, whereas EDDC has to put any council tax above 5% out to a referendum, which it would almost certainly lose, which is why devolution makes sense. Given the budget situation, I'd rather see some public toilets charged than closed completely, as they do elsewhere. But I do think another principle worth considering to add to this Cabinet report might be to have one public toilet free of charge in each big town where there are areas of high deprivation, such as Exmouth Town Centre. This is an uncomfortable truth, but in Exmouth we know there is a problem with rough sleepers in the Magnolia Centre. And I think the sight of rough sleepers begging members of the public for use of their contactless card to go to a loo would be a very sad sight indeed. I'm going to put the rest of my comments in writing, as I know that we need to move forward. Thank you, Chair.
We do. Thank you for your understanding, Councillor Miller, as well. We come to, again, I'm afraid we're playing just a minute still. Councillor Fred Gakel, please.
Thank you, Chair, and I'll be as brief as I possibly can. I'd just like to pick up on Councillor Wright's comment about scheme of steps, and also say to Mr. Hancock, brilliant report, very comprehensive, lots of information there. I'd just like to bring your attention to the final part of the Disability Discrimination Act 1995, which came into force on the 1st of October 2004. The aim of the Act is to end the discrimination faced by many disabled people in the UK, with the most common causes for complaint being a lack of access to premises for disabled people. And if that's the case, we've probably been breaking the law for a long time. Maybe it's time to sell steamer steps. Possibly somebody would like to turn it into a cafe and build a new toilet in the town car park, because it's got plenty of space there in Budley. And that might be an option to look forward to.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gakel. And again, my sincere thanks for your help in your timely speech. Councillor Cathy Gardner, please.
Thank you, Chair. Two things I'd like to say. Firstly, I'm very concerned about any charging for toilets in the future. I think it's a retrograde step for public health. I think we should do everything we possibly can to avoid charging for use of toilets, particularly given point 7.6 in the report, where it's noted that charging reduces the use of toilets. And I find that really worrying. Having been in the South Hams and seen how much they charge for their toilets, I've also noticed the mess outside where people simply couldn't pay to get in and had to go anyway. And that's really sad. It's demeaning, unhygienic, and just horrific. And we do not want to see that, particularly with our elderly population and elderly visitors and children coming to the beach. The second thing I want to say is that I think we should really consult with the town councils and potentially other groups like Chamber of Commerce on a town by town basis. Sidmouth has a number of toilets not included in our list. We've got toilets on the seafront that are owned and run by the town council. They're not included in our little map. And the toilets further out at Sidford and Long Park also need to be included in the whole picture. And we need to see how we can provide toilets for public use overall for the whole town, bearing in mind how important the seafront is and the car parks, as well as events like the Folk Festival and other things happening in Connaught Gardens, as well as the Ham. And I think you have to work as a group per town. I don't think EDDC should dictate which toilets are available and which aren't when we look to involve other partners or commercial uses.
Can I ask you, Chair of the Council, to wind up now, please?
I've done, that's it, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Right, so coming back, thank you members for your help there, much appreciated. Coming back into Cabinet, Councillor Paul Hayward, please.
Thank you, Chair. It is an emotive subject. As a clerk with a public toilet on my patch, I can vouch that the cleaning of public toilets is not a pleasant experience. All credit goes out to our street scene teams who have to contend with this. I've done it myself. One of my cleaning staff has actually refused to clean a toilet because of the mess that was in there, and yet our staff do it day in, day out. They are subject to vandalism, they're subject to abuse, they're subject to all sorts of things that most of us would not want to talk about. For those of us who've travelled abroad, the concept of charging and in some cultures going into a toilet where you put some money in a bowl and that there is someone there, well, that's probably not viable here. But as Councillor Young says, changes are necessary. And I'm heartened that we will be going to consultation to consider what's necessary. In terms of what Mr. Barlow spoke about earlier, yes, it may well be that we invite all of the towns and the parish councils to say, do you believe you can run them more efficiently, with some caveats and some overage so that we don't transfer the assets and then find them converted in something which doesn't include a public amenity, a public toilet. But it's going to need some innovative thinking. It's not going to be easy, and some things are not going to be palatable, but we're the grown-ups in the room. This has been kicked down the road and we're now picking it up, and it needs to be done because members of the public do not mind paying council tax as long as they see facilities, but the pot of money we have available to us is shrinking every single year, and so these are hard choices. You know, this is a theme that's come before this council before, so I'm grateful that we're discussing it today. I hope there'll be some agreement on recommendations, but I would just add that there are hard choices coming, and it is going to be a mixture of all the things put in this report, and I echo what other members have already said. Thank you to Andrew for this report. It's very comprehensive. In terms of things like capital budget, I know that a lot of work has gone into working out what they cost, but I would also like to see some discussion about going out to the private sector on a competitive basis, as we're bound to do as a council by procurement law, to say, okay, is a commercial company interested in refurbishing everything to a set standard? Take our toilets to that. But feel desperately sorry for this council and have to be put in this position, because when you are out and about, and if you are a vulnerable person or you have needs, to find no toilet is distressing. You know, the argument about cash versus card, well, a lot of what has happened in this last year, a lot of shops I've been in don't take cash anymore. They only want card. People are still buying stuff with cards. We're lucky that card usage has increased in the UK, and a lot of people, majority of people, have access to a card of some kind. But councillor, my apologies, whichever councillor said it, not all do. So it's that trade-off. Councillor Hartman, my apologies. But the same would apply for those who have cash. My children do not carry cash. I know that as a father to my cost, because they all seem to be forgetting their cards and I end up picking up the tab. So the consultation is necessary. Let's ask the questions. Let's work, as Councillor Barlow says, with the towns and parishes in a collaborative way, not the we know best way, but the what do you think you can do? Show us. It's part of the CAT discussion that myself and Mr. Child have been having with town and parish councils. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hayward. Like all of us tonight, you are indeed echoing your thanks. So sorry about the echo, people. We've got a couple more speakers within Cabinet. Councillor Marianne Rickson, please.
Well, bearing in mind comments that have just been made by other speakers, I would like to propose that we have another recommendation at number 4 after the one regarding asking overview to review the consultation. And I would suggest that it should say something along the lines of Cabinet agrees to consult stakeholders to obtain their views on these proposals in order to gain understanding and agreement that A, our public toilets need investment to not modernise them, B, investigate charging for their use to protect future provision, and C, provide a concessionary card for those with medical needs, because I think this is an issue that really needs to be taken into consideration. Those with, for example, something like Parkinson's or cancer, they find that they have a higher need for using the bathroom than other people. And I think that we need to help them too. Otherwise, they will be not coming to visit our towns.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Rickson. So are you putting that forward as a proposal with your amendment there? Okay, is there a seconder for that from anywhere?
Happy to, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Ledger. Okay, now we have recommendations and resolutions, but we can take them all in one. Yes, Henry, good to see your face on screen. Did you catch any of that?
No, I was going to ask if Councillor Rickson could email it through to me, and unfortunately my system, my separate computers just crashed as well. So yes. I can't actually see the report at the moment. I'm just trying in again. So if you could email it through to me, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, and another 3 cheers for Mr. Rees-Mogg. I'm wondering, Marianne, for clarity, could you bear to read those out again, please? Just
I'll just put it on the chat.
Okay, but perhaps for members of the public watching as well, it's a little bit confusing otherwise.
Okay. So item 4, Cabinet agrees to consult all stakeholders to obtain their views, their views on these proposals in order to gain understanding and agreement that our public toilets need investment to modernise them, investigate charging for their use to protect future provision, and provide a concessionary card for those with medical needs. Sorry, that should be obtain their views, not agreement.
Okay, yeah. Cabinet agrees to consult stakeholders to obtain their views on these proposals, etc. Okay, that's clear. We've got a proposer and a seconder. Councillor Young, anything you want to say, or?
No, I've got a hard copy, if you wish it.
Okay, thank you very much. In which case I propose, can you, Amanda, or whoever is doing this, please could you take us to a vote on this?
Yep, okay, so members of the Cabinet, please. I'm just going to clear the blue hands. If you could please vote using your green ticks for yes, your red crosses for no, and please raise your blue hand if you are abstaining from the vote, please. And for the benefit of those watching online, the vote is now taking place. And Chair, I have 9 votes for, so that is carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, can I just mention,
please, Henry?
Can you do item 5, please? I think we skipped item 5.
Oh, confidential exempt items. Yes, there are 2 confidential or exempt items which officers recommend should be dealt with in this way. Do I have to say what they are now, Henry?
No, it's items 13 and 14, and it's just a cabinet agree, please.
Thank you very much. Okay, so Cabinet, you'll see that when it comes to, it's not most clear, yes it is, item 13, which is to do with towards zero carbon development in the West End, and 14, thermal gallery staffing and cultural development have been recommended to be dealt with in Part B. Can we just take a vote on that you're agreeable for that to happen? I'll just do this one quickly if I make it. So just a green tick for yes, red cross for no, or abstain if you wish. And yeah, let's just see of green ticks. Okay, thank you for bringing me back to that, Henry, much appreciated. Moving on then to item, right, well, there we go. Well, so that's been a rite of passage for us all, hasn't it? That's one of the most difficult agenda items that will ever be covered in the history of this council, I'd have thought, in the most difficult circumstances. But moving swiftly on to something very constructive, which is a report from John Colding on the poverty strategy. John, over to you, please.
Thank you, Chair. So last year, you as Cabinet created a poverty working panel with the key purpose of producing a poverty strategy for Cabinet to consider. The poverty working panel have been researching the subject and gathering evidence from a range of contributors over the course of 7 meetings to date. You might recall that I presented a progress report to Cabinet on the 6th of January 2021 with 5 high-level poverty objectives which were considered and approved, and since then the panel have continued with a series of meetings, thematic type meetings, designed to help us produce this poverty strategy that you have before you tonight. This will be the first poverty strategy adopted by this council and is a significant statement of our intent to act on what is an unacceptable and negative impact of poverty that we see in the district and the inequality that poverty represents in society. There is recognition in the strategy and a degree of realism that we do not have all the answers or all the tools to eliminate poverty, but a desire to do what we can to make a positive impact on the social problem that limits life chances and the quality of life. We recognise in the report that the strategy builds on work that we've been doing for many years, but suggests that we adopt a more coordinated approach across a number of service areas and establish a case for higher priority to be given to the work. As you can see from the report, the work is cross-cutting in so much as it affects a number of services who have a stake in the activities that are directed towards reducing poverty. And I'm grateful to colleagues for their input into the draft strategy. It's been a genuine team effort to get to this point. I'm also grateful to partners such as Citizen Advice, the Department of Work and Pensions, a number of community and voluntary groups have also made valuable contributions. The poverty strategy, if adopted tonight, will sit with the Council's priorities in the Statement of Intent and the forthcoming Council Plan, and annexed to the report, which is essentially the heart of the report, is the suggested draft strategy and associated action plan. In section 2 of the covering report, I've tried to, have reproduced the terms of reference for the poverty working panel and the key lines of inquiry that we adopted. Section 3 covers the process of developing the strategy and some of the key considerations that the panel have taken into account. We have focused on the causes and effects of poverty, where we can make a direct difference, where we need to work with partners, and where we need to lobby for changes to social policy. The central theme of the strategy is based around 5 core objectives, and I've reproduced those in paragraph 3.6 of the covering report. In the document, we cover income, benefits, skills, financial resilience, indebtedness. We also consider the affordability of housing, the lack of housing for some, fuel poverty, furniture poverty, health inequalities, the work of the community and voluntary groups, jobs and the economy, and a range of safety nets. I would suggest that the strategy is comprehensive, it's quite wide-ranging, and it helps us to identify target groups where interventions will assist them come out of poverty. I'm also suggesting in the report that we keep the strategy under review. We're learning all the time. It needs to be a dynamic document that is adaptable as our experience and knowledge of this territory grows. In section 3 of the report, we also consider ways of taking the agenda forward and some of the positive interventions that we can make. I'm suggesting we're looking at who's best placed to lead this work stream. Some of the budget considerations are in the report, which links to the speed with which we can implement the strategy. I've also, Chair, appended to the report, attempted to produce a plan on a page which summarises the strategy. And finally, if I might, I'd just like to highlight the final paragraph in the report, which says that poverty ruins lives, it highlights inequalities and constrains potential. It's shameful that a level of poverty exists in modern society. So the council has a role to play. We cannot eliminate poverty alone in the district, but we're prepared to have a go and do what we can to reduce the incidence of poverty in East Devon. And I'm happy to answer any questions, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John, for this incredibly important report and for that excellent summary of it. Thank you very much. And for all members who've been involved in the Poverty Working Panel, and particularly to Councillor Armstrong, whose portfolio holder this is sat in, thank you. Very pleased to have this here tonight. Councillor Bruce Sarum, please.
Thank you, Chair. As a member of the panel, I must congratulate the panel on reaching its conclusions, particularly as we are aware that we have a climate emergency. And I think that it's very good that we are going to look at the housing stock condition survey in order that the housing will become, if we can, carbon neutral. So I think that it also ties in with the council's plan that we're looking at to improve the quality of residents' lives in housing. So I think John and his team, along with all of us, including, as you said, Megan, have done a most magnificent job, and I look forward to its implementation and successful conclusion so that no one is struggling with poverty within East Devon, as we've said. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor de Sarum. So there are no other speakers from outside of Cabinet. Who would like to come forward on this? I'm thinking quite possibly Megan. Yeah, brilliant. Megan, please. Councillor Armstrong.
Sorry about that, Chair. Press the wrong button. Can you hear me all right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. So thank you, Chair. This is an excellent strategy and action plan, and I would like to propose that all 4 recommendations are approved. As Chair of the Poverty Working Panel, I would like to thank all the officers and members of the cross-party panel for contributing so positively and enthusiastically during the last few months to both the strategy and the action plan. I would also like to thank, and I know John has already mentioned them, but I think it's worth mentioning again. I would also like to thank two of our external partners, Citizens Advice and the Department for Work and Pensions, who gave excellent presentations to the panel and explained the work that they do. I'd just like to emphasise 4 points in particular, and again, John has perhaps mentioned one or two of these already. But firstly, as a panel and officers, one of our main aims has always been to address, and is to address, the root causes of poverty in all its forms. That is really important. So, and it's not easy, but we have to do that, to look at the root causes and try and address those root causes. Secondly, much of the poverty-related work is already an integral part of most council services, such as finance, housing, community development, economy, and environmental health. So this strategy will emphasise and pursue further areas of concern with resources available to us. Thirdly, the action plan is a live document and will be amended as appropriate going forward. Fourthly, the panel will continue to meet in order to monitor progress, but perhaps not as frequently as every month as it has been over the last 7 months. So finally, Chair, I would just like to wholeheartedly propose these recommendations to Cabinet. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Armstrong. Councillor Ledger, please. Oh, I'm terribly sorry. I thought, it's Councillor Young. Sorry, Councillor Ledger. Councillor Young, please.
Thank you. I would just like to thank the officers for doing such a brilliant job. Thank you to John, and thank you to Megan, who've pulled this superb report together. And let's hope we get some success out of this. Thank you.
I'm looking for a seconder at the moment to Councillor Megan's proposal.
Yeah, I would like to second that.
Okay, thank you very much. There are no other speakers in Cabinet. So there is Councillor Jack Rowland, please.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, Jeff Young with his final comment beat me to it, because I was simply going to second what Megan so skillfully put together and with the recommendations.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll whip us straight onto the vote then, if that's okay, for a sense of time. If we can, so we have 3 recommendations, and which are Cabinet decisions, and we also have one that we recommended to Council. So that's 1 to 4. Can we green tick for yes, red cross for no, or hand for abstain, please, voting now. Thank you.
Okay, for the benefit of those watching online, the vote is now taking place. And Chair, I have 9 votes for. That is carried unanimously. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed, Debbie. Right, so next we come to agenda item 8, European Regional Development Fund Welcome Back Fund. And we have a report from Tim Child, Service Lead Place Assets and Commercialisation, and Andy Wood, Service Lead Growth Development and Prosperity. Tim, I think it's Tim doing this one, isn't it? Tim,
yes,
please.
It is, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. East Devon has benefited from £130,000 approximately of European Regional Development funding by way of the Reopening High Street Safely Fund. This was awarded in June of last year. We have so far, at this point, we have about 51,000 unspent. So the remaining 80 or thereabouts has been spent. And we have until the 30th of May this year to spend that. In November and December last year, we engaged with local high street businesses through our economic development team to better understand what businesses wanted to see this money being spent on. And in section 1.3 of the report, you'll see I've set out the 4 different strands of activities that we are delivering. We've now been awarded an extension to the Reopening High Streets Safely Fund by way of the aptly named Welcome Back Fund. We've received an additional £231,000, and as I said, under the heading of the Welcome Back Fund. This is funding allocated to councils generally, but with East Devon receiving an enhanced sum, as indeed other coastal areas did, to reflect our coastal location and the need to safely welcome tourists over the summer season and beyond. There's slightly different to the Reopening High Street Safely Fund, which was focused on supporting high streets, as the name says, and neighbourhood centres. So therefore, when looking to spend this Welcome Back Fund, we will need to reflect this in terms of how we allocate that spend. So it isn't just about high streets; it's about our coastal areas. With the new Welcome Back Fund, we have until 31st of March next year to spend that. And we are permitted to include within that and within the carryover the unspent sum of circa 50k currently on the Reopening High Streets Fund, which therefore means that we've got approximately £282,000 to spend under the Welcome Back Fund. So what will the Welcome Back Fund provide for? It will allow us to continue supporting the current 4 work streams summarised in paragraph 1.3 of the report, and to continue doing that up until March next year. But it will also allow us to progress 2 additional work streams. And these two additional work streams are set out in paragraphs 2.6 and 2.7 of my report. The first of those 2 new work streams are around supporting also support to promote a safe public environment for the visitor economy. And you'll see within the report 2.6, I list as a series of bullet points exactly what that actually means in practice. Around place-based marketing, marshals, public space maintenance of public conveniences, topical perhaps, beautification activities, including graffiti removal, etc., etc. The second additional strand is, and it's perhaps a slightly unusual one actually, it's around developing plans for responding to the medium-term impact of COVID. And it's probably worth noting at this point that 2 of our local MPs are actively encouraging that we use an element of this Welcome Back Fund to support the development of bids for the Levelling Up Fund. So the proposals as to how we progress with the Welcome Back Fund are set out in section 3 of the report. And what's key is within section 3.7, there's a, sorry, my computer's a little slow. Section 3.7, there's a table, yes it is, a table that sets out the various, the broad programme of activities that we propose to deliver. It's worth also noting, we will undertake further targeted stakeholder engagement to further shape and refine delivery, in particular the items set out within that table. But I should point out that it's not a similar programme of consultation to that which we did initially with the Reopening High Street Safely Fund. And I suppose to sort of wrap this up, it's worth noting that moving forward, this particular funding stream, so the Welcome Back Fund, will be managed through Andy Wood and his service, with support from my service. Hence, it's a joint report with my service having led today on the Reopening High Streets Safely Fund. There are a number of different recommendations within the report. One for noting a number of one for noting, a number for resolving, and indeed one for recommending to council. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much indeed, Tim. That's a very clear explanation. Any members from outside of Cabinet wish to ask a question or pass a comment? And that looks like a no. So coming back within Cabinet, please. Any questions, any comments or any proposals? Councillor Paul Hayward, please.
Yeah. Having worked with Mr. Child since June last year and been well aware of the complexity of the reopening the High Street Safely Fund and all the caveats and terms and conditions that go with it, I'm heartened that there's some extra funding available and that we're able to roll over the unspent element, and nothing agrees me more than having to hand money back to HM Treasury. So I'm delighted that we can roll it over and actually use it in a different way, be it slightly related. So I'm happy, I'll be delighted to propose the recommendations as shown on the report. Recommendation 1, and then 3 resolutions of Cabinet and 1 Cabinet recommendation to Council.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hayward. Councillor John Loudon, please.
Very happy to second, Chair.
With no further speakers, Debbie, can we go to a vote on that, please?
Yes, of course, Chair. So members of the Cabinet, if you could please use your green ticks if you're in support, red cross for against, and raise your electronic hand to abstain. And Chair, I have 8 votes in support, no votes against, and 1 abstention. So that is carried. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Debbie. And Councillor, I'm terribly sorry, but Councillor, I'm going to just confess to pressing the wrong button. I'm assuming, Councillor, you didn't intend to abstain. Okay, there we go. We're here to entertain everybody. Moving on to agenda. Right. Yes, let's do that.
Reconfirm the vote.
Can we do the vote again, please, Debbie? That would be sensible.
Just so we're clear for members of the public. So members of the Cabinet, if you could just vote again, please, on that last item. And Chair, I can confirm that that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much.
Right, fantastic. Thank you very much. There's a sort of quiet hysteria developing at Blackdown House. It must just be clear to people watching this. Right, we'll take one more item before we take a short comfort break, just reassuring DS officers there. So we go to, we've got about, hopefully another 15 minutes or so on agenda item 9, which is developing East Devon's creative arts sector and cultural tourism offer. And we have a report from Charlie Plough on that and Andy Wood. Probably Charlie, you're going to speak first. I don't know. Surprise me.
Yes, I will, Chair. I'll jump in before Andy.
Thank you, Charlie.
Just before I go into the report, I just wanted to very quickly respond to Ian Barlow, because I can see he's patiently waited for the last hour and 3/4. So he raised some specific issues about the recent Arts and Council East Devon meeting that was held a few weeks ago. Just to kind of reassure him, the purpose of that inaugural meeting was really to bring together a wide range of the sort of creative arts groups across the whole of East Devon. It was an open invitation. It was widely advertised. And I know there was representation from Sidmouth at that group, at that meeting, because I actually presented at that meeting. So the purpose of that was to really agree how the group should form, how it can help influence our thinking around cultural items across a broad range of areas. So that was the sort of the rationale for that. The second part of the meeting, and if Andy doesn't mind me speaking on his behalf, was to just quickly update on the status of the AIR fund. And I can never remember what AIR stands for, but there's a cultural strand to that. And I think Ian Barlow was talking about that, that can hopefully benefit a wide range of, say, creative arts and cultural organisations. There was a short delay, or I think there's been a delay on launching that scheme until early July, if I'm correct. And at the time of the meeting, we weren't in a position to say we could accept applications at that particular point. And it was just a case, I took a question from the organizer, the potential organizer of the Sidmouth Jazz Festival, and reassured him on that point. And I think he seemed to be happy with that. So just to reassure Mr. Barlow that, we are very keen that once the air funds open, then we will hopefully receive a significant amount of applications from a cultural perspective to benefit from that. So I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you for indulgence, Chair. And I'm happy to speak to Mr. Barlow outside of the meeting as well if he needs any further follow-ups. So if I can just crack on with the report, it's a fairly lengthy report, one of many tonight. So I think Andy and I will try and keep this fairly quick and précis the key issues within it. I think from my perspective, from the cultural perspective, what's very clear is that during the lockdown, or the 3 lockdowns we've had, our appreciation and need for culture and what it brings to society has never been more clearly understood and valued. And that's mirrored sort of similar and identical feelings with our reconnection with nature. What the report attempts to do is show that the Thelma Hulbert Gallery has started to repurpose itself into a much broader arts development role that's linking into placemaking schemes, and the Abode of Love is a good example of that. Working with the Wild East Devon team, with the Creative Cabin initiative, and in a few weeks we'll be looking to launch our climate change work in, I think it's second week in June, with a new exhibition at the Ocean that highlights the impacts of plastics in our seas. So there's a fundamental shift in the way that the gallery is looking to operate that I think reflects this desire and ambition from within council to expand its operation and its role to cover the whole of the district. There are 4 specific areas I'd like to sort of cover where I think we should look to develop and invest our cultural teams' time and also resources. The first one's around developing stronger connections with health and well-being and linking that much more directly to culture. There's significant opportunities here, especially as we emerge from the emotional and physical impacts of COVID. And I'm sure this will no doubt be reflected in the public health plan. And I'll certainly be talking with John and our public health officer, Helen Wareham, to ensure that that is captured within the next iteration of the plan. Secondly, I see that our sort of cultural development work should be very much at the heart of our economic recovery work. And I know Andy will touch a little bit on this after me, particularly in areas such as cultural tourism, our regeneration schemes, and creating employment opportunities. I think it's fair to say that the cultural sector has been, without doubt, the hardest hit sector since we entered into the pandemic. And particularly our freelancers have had a particularly tough time, and there's been a lot of unemployment and a lot of uncertainty, particularly within that sector. And through our cultural support work, we do support freelancers, whether they're individuals providing lighting, sound, stage sets, etc. So it's a very important sector for us, and we want to continue to support that. Thirdly, I think it's fair to say that our community art sector has also had a pretty tough time, and this is where the Arts and Culture East Devon Forum can play a very important role in helping to support the sort of the bounce back of our community arts activities, which again are very, very important to defining what East Devon is about. And finally, from me, we must also look to make sure that everything that we do going forward ties right back into our climate change commitments. That's absolutely sort of critical. So that we've got to be mindful and cognizant of everything we're doing is in line and on message with our climate change work. In terms of our role, I see it as very nuanced. I think I'm not advocating that East Devon District Council takes on everything and that we suddenly become the sole provider of culture. And I think the report actually sort of sets that out. What I'm suggesting is that, yes, we can operate and function as a cultural hub, but also we need to operate as an enabler, a partner, and also be the catalyst to capitalise on recovery funded programmes such as the Levelling Up Fund, community renewal funds, which do have specific cultural strands that can actually help the bounce back. So we have a sort of multifaceted role here, and hopefully the report reassures members that we're not advocating that EDDC takes on everything in this domain. So the need for a culture strategy becomes absolutely paramount to be able to articulate those ambitions and that vision into a framework where we can make the right decisions, be it policy related or resource related, so that we're all absolutely clear on what our role is within the cultural development that we want to see going forward, that links back into the tourism work that I know Andy wants to talk about as well. So if I can hand chair over to Andy.
Yes, please, Charlie. Thank you very much. Thank you for that. Andy Wood, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Charlie. So very quickly, Chair, I just wanted to highlight probably a couple of things. Firstly, in the first two sections, tried to emphasise both the significance of the tourism sector to the economy of the district, but also subsequently the impact of the pandemic. And probably the thing that jumps off the page for me are the two tables, one on the proportion of staff who are furloughed and the other on cash flow in businesses, those businesses with less than 3 months cash flow. And in both of those, for both the accommodation and food sectors, but also the arts, entertainment, recreation sectors are the ones that stand out as being the most heavily impacted. And that's something I think we need to be very mindful of during, as we plan for recovery. Also, it must be very difficult from a business perspective to go from, ideally you would have quite predictable and steady demand from periods of, where demand is completely closed off to now potentially a very busy summer. And certainly first references I've heard to potential for over-tourism, which is potentially a new term that's coming forward as well. Secondly, it's just to highlight section 3, and I think to pick up on Charlie's point, how we can add value going forward. A series of bullet points there with some potential ideas and themes that I think the strategy will need to take forward and consider. And just finally, just to pick up on the last of those around potential for investment, again, just to pick up on what Charlie just said, we do have our own discretionary funds, the Adaptation, Innovation, Resilience Fund, for example. The timing of that was agreed at the last Cabinet meeting, but also, for example, in relation to Expert today, a discussion around the Levelling Up Fund. And I think it's instructive, that's one of the government's flagship recovery programmes, reinforced, if you like, within the Queen's speech. And 3 investment themes for round 1 are transport, town centre regeneration, and cultural investment, and those 3 things really working together. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Andy, and thank you very much, Charlie, again. Can I come outside of Cabinet to Councillor Joe Wibley, please?
Hi there. I guess speaking in my role as the champion. I'd just like to thank Charlie for the report. I think it's really, really good. And just my little rousing speech. I think culture is what we make it here. It's a fantastic opportunity. What I'm most interested in right now in terms of arts and culture is the mental health aspects of the art and the ability it'll have to help us all heal, I guess, after the pandemic. And if we're happier, a happier Devon is a better Devon, and I personally think that's priceless. But also in sort of more realistic terms and sort of practical terms, as Charlie said in his report, and Andy, that the arts, it has tremendous potential to boost the local economy. An investment in the cultural sector can, if we do it properly, bring some real financial gains to the district. And if it's not done properly, we might as well not bother. So I do agree. I do think that a strategy, an arts and culture strategy going forward, is really, really important. I'd like to ask Cabinet to view this report with those points in mind. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wibley, and thank you personally to you for your work on bringing this forward as well. I'm particularly pleased not only with the activity being proposed, but I do think the branding, the ACED, ACE, Arts and Culture East Devon, is a really good development. It's something we can hang a lot on. And I share your view. I keep saying this, art for art's sake, yes, that's okay. But it does need to make an economic case for itself, and I believe this does here. Thank you. So coming to Councillor Bruce Desarum, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think that Charlie hit the nail on the head when he talked about this being the hardest hit sector during the pandemic. And I think we've seen this in Exmouth, for example, because we haven't had the Exmouth Festival for the last 2 years. So it has been very disappointing that way from a cultural point of view. But I think it's really good that we're going to have a good strategy, and that we're also going to have a tourist strategy, because it's really important, as you rightly said, to build a more resilient tourism economy, promoting digital transition and rethinking about more sustainable tourism system, as it says in point 44 of the report. So I, like Joe Wibley, I'm happy to agree with Joe Wibley to ask Cabinet to recommend the report. So thank you very much indeed, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Desarum, for that. So coming back within Cabinet, as I said earlier, to Mr. Barlow from Sidmouth, and I hope perhaps he's got a wider, broader understanding of this now after Charlie's patient explanation, and perhaps from reading this report. This has been a central plank of this administration's year. So portfolio holder for this area has only actually been in position since January, and I think we've made huge strides in that time. So talking of whom, Councillor Nick Hookway.
Yes, okay, thank you, Chair. Yes, thanks very much indeed to Charlie and Andy for their report. And I want to emphasise all the major points that are made. Tourism is a very important industry across East Devon. We know that. We've looked at it in a rather old-fashioned way in the past. We're now looking at it in a more modern and flexible way. We want to encourage and promote the district, and we want to encourage and promote tourism in all parts of the district, not just on the coastal areas, but in all towns and villages, wherever they are found. Cultural activities are very important. They generate income. We've talked today about the poverty strategy. By encouraging cultural activities, we are encouraging people to earn money. And while the council itself might not earn a great deal of money by helping its residents, we are going to make their lives better. Cultural activities improve well-being, and there is no doubt there is a huge potential within the district at all levels for some really exciting and interesting cultural activities. And therefore, Chair, I'd like to propose that we recommend the recommendations.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hookway. Councillor John Loudon, please.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I would just like to slightly digress by saying that sitting in this rather empty chamber with my Cabinet colleagues reminds me of being in one of those interminable international meetings I spent some of my life in, where you have in one hand an interpreter speaking in your ears, whilst at the same time you have next to you somebody speaking in a different language, and it's all on a time delay. So it's deja vu, and it makes as much sense. Right, on to the serious stuff. We can all attest, can't we, to the range of excellent tourism and cultural offerings we have across the district. And I'm incredibly glad that we're looking at revamping, developing the tourism and cultural strategies, much needed, as everybody has said. I would reinforce some of what Ian Barlow said earlier on, only some. I recognise, because I'm a member of the Sidmouth Town Council, that Sidmouth Town Council has really taken on board very seriously upgrading and revamping its tourism promotion. What it does there will ripple into other parts of the district. And I'm sure others are doing something similar, maybe not as well, I say, tongue in cheek perhaps. But we as a council need to recognise what our neighbours and our colleagues are doing, and we need to look at how we can link up with and interlink towns and parishes to help them and us build on, support, supplement the diverse cultural activities that are going on around us. And we need to consult and engage and be inclusive with the towns and parishes and all the key stakeholders in the development of these two very important strategies that will benefit the local economy, as has been said, our residents, our businesses, and our much needed tourists, much loved as well. So finally, I would say to Ian Barlow, as chair of the Sidmouth Town Council, Ian, be patient. These are developing strategies and they're in their early stages. And I hope by the end of their development, you'll be a happier bunny.
Thank you very much. Can I feel a seconding coming on, Councillor Loudon as well?
I do beg your pardon, Chair. I do beg your pardon, Chair. I do second.
Okay, thank you very much. So there are no other speakers, and so you can see Cabinet Agenda Item 9, page 85. We have a series of recommendations and also a recommendation to Council for a budget as well. Debbie, can I ask you to lead us through a vote on this, please?
Yes, of course, Chair. So members of the Cabinet who are in the room at Blackdown House, can you please vote using your green ticks if you're in agreement, red cross if you're against, or raise your hand if you're abstaining. We have the 10th member of Cabinet who has just joined us, but is joining us virtually. Okay, so Chair, I can confirm that you have 9 votes for, so that's carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Debbie. Now, at the risk of making this an even longer evening, I do think probably, particularly given the difficulties of this meeting, can I suggest we take a quick break, and we come back to start the meeting again, please, at 8:10, 2010. Thank you very much. Okay, can everybody take their positions again, please? Assume the positions.
So you've been in those international meetings?
Oh, that was brilliant. That made me really, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've been, like, if you go at a film festival or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, Chair, you ready to proceed?
Yes, thanks, Debbie, very much. Happy to go on to the next item. Okay, are we live now, Debbie?
We are, Chair. Yes,
Thank
please.
you very much. Thank you, everybody. Welcome back to this virtual meeting, 12th of May 2021, which is being held partly in Blackdown House, where Cabinet are present because in law at the moment we must be physically present in the same room in order to pass resolutions and recommendations. The remainder of members and officers are still interacting with the meeting via Zoom, and that explains some of the difficulties this evening. If we can come to agenda item 10 now, please, Seaton Jurassic, and we've got a report from Simon Davey, our Strategic Lead for Finance. Simon, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a short report, so not much to add. It's just really a position statement of where we are in terms of Seaton Jurassic at the moment. Outlines some of the complexities involved, just to highlight to members, and talks about the next steps we need to take. Most of that will fall to Tim Child's team, who I know is having quite a few discussions at the moment with DWT. So happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you very much, Simon. Members from outside of Cabinet. Councillor Marcus Hartwell, please.
Thank you, Chair. Not so much a question as more of just passing comment, really. So it's quite sad and disappointing that Devon Wildlife Trust have decided to stop operating Seaton Jurassic. However, I believe that we're actually in a strong position to look forward at this and a renewed vision for the visitor centre. And I believe that we may not need to look too far to actually find that vision. What I would ask is that the portfolio holder for economy and our officers do prioritise this because it's vitally important for the tourist economy in Seaton that the centre continues to operate both in an interim phase between now and September, but also that we find a more long-term solution as well. So I would just ask that as much resource as possible is put into this, and knowing that our resources are stretched at the moment, but it's just recognising that this is vitally important for the local tourist economy and obviously bouncing back post-COVID. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hartnell. Coming back into Cabinet, Councillor Jack Rowland, please.
Thanks, Chair. I would like to echo what Councillor Hartnell just said about the importance of this for the local economy in Seaton. And it's really quite encouraging to see as well that as part of the next steps, there has been credible interest already shown in the future operation of the building. And I know that Councillor Hartnell and both myself have both received interest from third parties that we have passed on to Charlie Plowden. So I look forward to seeing what those next steps are. And I'd like to recommend acceptance of the recommendation that's in the report.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rowland. Councillor Paul Hayward, please.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'm happy to second that, and I do take on board what Councillor Hart said. It's very important to the Seaton economy, and I'll be working with officers and give it the the necessary oomph that it needs. Councillor Hartlett's quite right. Our resources are stretched, officers are being used hither and thither, but we'll make sure that this building is given all the attention it needs, especially with regards to the additional works, and we'll be coming to that in due course, I'm sure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hayward. Councillor Nick Hookway, please.
Yes, I'd just like to agree with Councillor Hartnell how the importance of the building, Jurassic building in terms of tourism. I also have received requests from third parties, an interest in the building, which I've passed on, and I can confirm that Charlie Brown and I are discussing some of these third party interests on a regular basis. So it is getting a lot of attention at the present time. By the way, can I recommend acceptance of the recommendations as well? Propose we recommend those.
I think it's a seconding of Councillor Rowland.
Oh, okay. Oh, sorry, second on that, yes.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Councillor Hookway. Debbie, can you take us through a vote on that, please?
Yes, of course, Chair. So members of the Cabinet in the room, please, if you could please vote with your green ticks in support, red cross against, or raise your electronic hand to abstain. And Chair, I have 8 votes for, no votes against, and no abstentions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Simon, officers, Debbie, and speakers. Can we now come to agenda item 11, which is a consideration of public consultation by Cabinet to enable variants of the Exmouth ASB Public Spaces Protection Order 2020 to 2023. Now, it says that we've got a report from David Whelan. Dave, are you there?
Chair, it's Andrew. I'm going to present.
It is Andrew. This keeps happening. Okay, Andrew, off we go, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try to keep it brief, mindful of the time. This is a two-stage process. Stage 1 is what we're asking you to approve today. That is to carry out a public consultation. If that goes ahead, then we'll come back to you for a second go once we've carried out that public consultation. So the Public Space Protection Order is one of the tools in our toolkit, came out of the antisocial behaviour legislation from 2014. It enables us to deal with particular nuisances or problems that affect the defined geographical area, those problems being detrimental to the local community. In this case, we're talking about the consumption of alcohol in a harmful way, resulting in detriment and nuisance to the local community. We've had an order of this kind in place in Exmouth now for 3 or 4 years. It's working well, it's effective. The police have issued a couple of fixed penalty notices, but they report that they are making use of the powers pretty much on a weekly basis to discourage people drinking to excess in the central parts of Exmouth, and where necessary, confiscating the alcohol that would otherwise lead to further instances of antisocial behaviour. What we've got today is a request now to consult on extending that provision. The police have noted that following release from lockdown last June, we saw significant numbers of people drinking alcohol, and with resultant public order issues and public urination and littering in the beach area and other parts of Exmouth. And sadly, we saw a further recurrence of that as recent as Easter this year, as soon as we saw any sort of glimmer of a release from lockdown again. So the police have asked us if we could consult on extending that order to areas where they believe that activity is being and would be displaced. So in particular, the beaches and areas around the Mare in Exmouth would be included in this current proposal. So just to recap, all we're asking today is for you to make a decision on whether we can go to consultation on this. We'll listen carefully to what the public say. and we'll bring that back to you. But it will have to be done in a fairly tight time scale if we're going to get anything in place to be effective this summer, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Andrew. So the recommendation we have is the Cabinet resolve to carry out public consultation on proposals to vary the Exmouth ASB Public Spaces Protection Order 2020-23 as detailed in the report, and receive a report with recommendations once the consultation has concluded. Coming to members outside the Cabinet first, Councillor Paul Miller, please.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I think it's vital, if possible, we can meet those tight timescales to get this in place this summer. Other colleagues of mine in Exmouth will be aware this has become a major issue, and a lot of it is caused actually not from Exmouth people, but people who travel, young people that travel to Exmouth from Exeter. I think one of the most important things to point out is that this isn't an alcohol ban, but this is how it's been reported by Devon Live in the last week or two, which this report, Dave's report, specifically warns that this could be sensationalised, because we're going out. I mean, I hope Cabinet will put this out to consultation, but I do think that I understand our communications department is currently under quite a lot of pressure due to staffing, but I do think we need to put the message out there that this is not a blanket alcohol ban. Members of the public are not going to be arrested for having a picnic on the Mare. This is to stamp out sort of late night binge drinking and associated antisocial behaviour that Exmouth councillors, as myself, have seen last summer, and sadly it's starting to happen again. Has been since the spring. So I just wanted to say that we need to be very clear in our press. I would propose that we put out some press releases, or one press release, to clarify this is not a blanket ban, because there is some hysteria at the moment in the Exmouth community with people thinking that this applies to absolutely everybody that chooses to have a drink on the seafront or on the beach. So thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Miller. And I noticed that Andrew stressed that, and we have previously discussed the absolute need for clear communications on that, and thank you for restating it. It is imperative. This is not to prevent somebody going down with a chilled bottle of rosé or even 2 cans of Heineken if they wish, or to have a picnic. It's for the people who are going down to the beach in the middle of the night, throwing the rosé at the people with the cans of Heineken. Okay, right. So the next speaker, please, Councillor Bruce Sarum, who wouldn't throw anything at anybody. Bruce, please.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. Just to say, obviously, with Councillor Hookway and myself as fellow Littleham Ward members, I think, well, certainly my inbox has been full of complaints from Foxhole's residents. If it's not the camper van issue, it is this issue. And I think it's excellent that tonight we're going to take positive steps to stamp it out. And I absolutely endorse what Councillor Miller has said, that we're not looking for an alcohol ban. And as you rightly said as well, it's not an alcohol ban, it's merely to stamp out antisocial behaviour. And I think the residents of Foxholes will be able to sleep much more reassured tonight, knowing that we've taken this matter in hand at the Cabinet, at the very heart of the East Devon democratic process. Thank you very much indeed, Chair.
Thank you for that rousing speech, as ever, Councillor Sarum. Councillor Fred Cagle, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Public Service Protection Order instigated in 2007, as stated in the report. Only 2 fixed penalty notices have been served under this order. Now, a lot of these things are all very well in practice, but you've got to be strong with your detriment, because if you don't get a clear message out to those that breach the Public Service Protection Order, people just get away with it. And I'm sorry, I don't agree with some of the statement in paragraph 3, where the businesses from the local area of the Strand ring on a weekly basis to report street drinking and antisocial behaviour, which the police respond to and deal with. The information that I get from local businesses is that they ring the police, the local police turn up and don't do anything about it, but when the Exeter police come down, they are much more stronger and robust with their actions. And I've had that from a couple of businesses. So I agree with the PSPO. If it's managed properly, and it's implemented properly. And if we're going to enforce it to those that it needs enforcing to, and send out a clear message that it's not acceptable to break the law.
Thank you, Councillor Cagle. Councillor Steve Gazzard, please.
Thank you, Chair. Well, obviously you can see that the Exmouth Town Councillors are all singing from the same hymn sheet tonight, Chair, and I echo what my colleagues have said. But having this order is only as good as if it's enforced, and obviously, as the previous speaker just said, you know, it's whether or not we've got the facility to enforce it. And I would be, I know it says in the report that there's only 2 fines issued, but I would be really interested to hear a report from the police to say how many times they've actually been called out, because unfortunately, it's like a lot of things in life, isn't it? It's a minority that are causing the problem. Everybody else seems to be content in what they're doing and doing it properly. And as Councillor Miller says, it is not a blanket ban. And I think we need to get that message out clear to everybody that we're not going to be taking drinks away from all and sundry. It's just those that are acting in an irresponsible way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Gazzard. So we're back now into Cabinet. Councillor Jack Rowland, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move acceptance of the recommendation because I think it's essential. And obviously, if this is implemented, it's really down to the police to use their discretion for the very reasons that have already been given, that you don't want to dissuade people from having a picnic with associated few drinks. I think the issue that Councillor Cagle touched on is a separate issue that can be tackled once this extension is in place by the summer, because if it's found to be not being properly policed in some ways, then that's a separate issue to take up at that time. But without having this extension, we wouldn't be able to even enforce it anyway. So I think it's essential, and that's the reason for why I'm moving the recommendation.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rowland. Councillor Nick Hookway, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes. Yeah, I think this is very important to emphasise that it's not a blanket ban. The police will need to act proportionately, and their intention is really to have the power to intervene and stop people from getting further into trouble. That's also why the area of the PSPO has been significantly enlarged, and that will allow the police to follow people and make sure that they don't get moved on from one place and cause problems in another area. So I'd like to second the proposal, please.
Thank you, Councillor Hookway. Councillor Paulhaven, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is another collaborative, cooperative issue, and I'm sure that if Councillor Cagle, as one of the ward members, talks to the 2 county councillors for Exmouth, who I understand are in very close dialogue with the new or re-elected Police and Crime Commissioner, that comments about the performance of the police and their enforcement of PSPOs can be taken up through those channels. And if we all collaborate together, Councillor Miller's raised a very valid point. You know, just because the PSPO is there doesn't mean a fine has to be issued. You know, a part of the talent and the skill of a policeman or a police officer, my apologies, is not always to use the stick, sometimes to use the carrot. A lot of the people who are offending are probably known to police officers and just need a gentle reminder. So you don't need to fine everyone. You can confiscate alcohol from people who are acting inappropriately, but you don't need to fine them. And in some cases, actually fining people is self-defeating. So I think it's a mixture of the carrot and the stick. But I'm sure if Councillor Cagle has concerns along those lines, he can relay them to the officers at East Devon or to the Exmouth County Councillors or to Ms Hernandez himself. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hayward. So I believe that's all the speakers we have. We had a proposal, the seconder, I think we had Councillor Rowland and then Councillor Hookway. So Debbie, can you take us to a vote on that, please?
Of course, Chair. So members of the Cabinet who are in the room, please, could you please vote with your green ticks if you are in favour, red cross if you're against, or raise your electronic hand if you are abstaining. And Chair, I have 8 votes in support, none against, no abstentions. So that is carried. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed, Debbie. So that brings to an end the parts of the meeting that we have in public. And now, well, it doesn't quite actually, because we have to cover that under agenda item 12. And I'll pass over to the Vice Chair, Councillor Paul Hayward, Deputy Leader of the Council.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move the following. That under section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972, the public, including the press, be excluded from the meeting as exempt information of the description set out on the agenda is likely to be disclosed, and on balance, the public interest is in discussing this item in private session, also known as Part B.
Thank you very much. Henry, I've got a feeling we voted on that earlier. Should we be voting on that again here at this point?
The Cabinet's already agreed to do it, but this is the formal resolution to move into Part B, so that's fine.
Okay. So Debbie, can we just take a vote on this to make sure the Cabinet are all happy with that, please?
Of course, Chair. So Cabinet members, if you could please use your voting buttons if you're in agreement to move into Part B. And Chair, that's agreed by the Cabinet. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, and thank you for all members of the public who have been watching tonight. I hope you've enjoyed it. See you next time. Thank you.
Okay, Chair, I will let you know when we have